So we were able to see that our title and add note, in this case description, states are working because we are able to add things to our fields. So this is really good. But what we want to do ultimately is to be able to save, or at least when this is clicked, be able to save. Okay, let's go back to our note there. I'm going to close down there because we don't need to look at this point at the user interface. We just want to look at the logic. So if you look at the next note button, I should say, which is save, which says save, we have here the onClick lambda. So what needs to happen here? Well, first of all, I'm going to validate. I'm going to say if I want to check if title dot is not empty and description also is not empty, only then will I be able to say let's save or add to the list. Okay. But when that happens, I also want to do something. I want to clear our title. I'm going to just set that to empty like this, an empty string, as well as our description. So I'm going to say empty string. This is how we clear the fields once we have clicked save. Okay. And remember, the reason why this title and description are what they are is because they are mutable state. We need those, as we have talked about. Something to remember. But what is it? How do we then save or add this item into our list in this case? Right? So we are able to display at the bottom here something like this at a later time. Here's the beauty. If we go back to the top where we instantiated or created our note screen here, we need to pass a few parameters. Primarily, we want to be able to pass that responsibility to whoever is calling note screen. So what I mean by that is we know that this note screen, because it's going to have also later time all the list of all of these notes, right? That means then here I'm going to have to pass notes like that, and it's going to be a list of notes, note object, which we haven't created. Do not use this provider contact. That's not what we want. So let's go ahead and create that first before we move forward. So where do we go? Let's go to our project. Let's go to our model. In this case, right click. I'm going to create a new Kotlin class. It's going to be a data class, right? Call this note. So our note here is going to be very simple. Now, because I want to make this note easy to work with in the future, if we choose to do so, I'm going to add an ID. So I'm going to say val ID. Now, I could come here and start adding perhaps random numbers each time a note is created and so forth, and that's very valid. But there is a really awesome class that we can use that creates random UUIDs. A UUID is universal ID. So what I can do here, I'm going to set ID. It's going to be a UUID type. This comes from Java util. Okay, if you scroll up, you can see a class that represents an immutable universal unique ID. Universal unique identifier. I love that. Great name. Okay. And you can read more about it and so forth. So the idea is that this will create very strong IDs that we don't have to worry about ever. So I'm going to import that. I'm going to set it to create that UUID. There's different forms here. I'm just going to use the random UUID like this. So each time a note is created, we're going to have something like this. So anytime you need to create IDs, random IDs, UUIDs like this, which means the IDs will never be the same, which is what we want. Take care of business with UUID, that random. And next thing I'm going to pass here is going to val title. It's going to be just a string. Next, I'm going to add description. Also string. And because we are excited, and also just because I'm going to add an entry date here. So it's going to be, I'm going to use local date time, Java time there, and I'm going to set this to local date to now. Okay, so what this will do, anytime that this class is created, or an object, or this class is instantiated to create a node, we're going to have a random ID generated. We don't have to add ourselves. We can if we want, but we don't have to. And then we're going to have the timestamp, which is going to be the time when this was added or created. Very neat. That's all. Okay, so now that we have our node, we can go back to our node screen here and uncomment this, and this should work. Now let's be careful. Let's go ahead and import. Make sure we get our node from our project. There we go. What else do you want to do? Well, for each node, you want to be able to, of course, add that node to somewhere, as well as remove that node, right? So in this case, I'm going to also pass the on add node what I want to happen. Well, I'm going to pass a node object that needs to be added, obviously, and in this case, I'm going to just return nothing. And then on remove node, I need that node, so I know what is it that I'm removing, and also return nothing. All right, now we're going to have an issue. If you have it over here to the right, click in our node screen preview here, it's going to say, well, I don't have any nodes, so what's going on? Well, in this case here, I'm just going to go ahead and say, for instance, for nodes, I'm going to say empty list, and then for on add node, let's just put an empty lambda. On remove, also an empty lambda for now, because this is just the preview, so we're just going to pass that. In fact, also we'll probably have to do the same thing when we go to our main activity. What are we calling? For now, I'm just going to say nodes, say empty list. On remove node, let's just pass that for now. On add, also just pass something like that for now. We'll change all of that. So back to nodes here. You'd see that our node screen now requires a list of nodes. So we need some sort of a list of nodes. For now, what we're going to do, we're going to have dummy data. So instead, inside of our data here, I'm going to say command N, right? Another way of getting there. Let's create a class, Kotlin class. It's just going to be a file, node, data, like that. And here, I'm going to just create a class. Call this nodes data source, and just create a function here. Say load nodes. It's going to return a list, yes, of nodes, our nodes. Make very careful what we're importing there. And so now this will return a list of nodes. So I'm going to say list of, like that. Now I do have a lot of nodes, so I'm just going to copy all of them and add them here, so you don't have to type it all, and you also will have access to all of that, or you can write them yourself. Okay, so these are objects of nodes which are going to be returned. So anytime we want a nodes, we come to nodes data source and load nodes. We should be good, maybe not. There we go. I think looks like I'm missing something here. Copy and paste sometimes gets ya. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we have the infrastructure set up so we can continue here.